And we're live. Hey, good evening and welcome. We'll give our guests a second or two to come on in. Okay, welcome folks. We're happy to have you. If you arrived at the Be On Air Forum, you're in the right place. So we're going to get started in a quick second. Okay. Well, why don't we get started now? Because we have a busy hour, and as our guests trickle in, we'll welcome them and let them know they're here at the Be On Air Forum. For everybody that's with us tonight, we want to welcome you. My name is Linda Lejeski. I am the National Employer Representative for the Be On Air Network of Media Schools. The Be On Air Network includes Ohio Media School, Illinois Media School, Colorado Media School, and Miami Media School. If you're new to our forum and you've not had a chance to learn about our media programs, I encourage you to put a little note in the comments, and I will be happy to reach out to you and let you know what we're all about. This series is a career services initiative. Each of our campuses has a career service director, and the intention of that is to help our students as they move through the program prepare for their job in media or whatever their goals are. Maybe they're going to have to start their own business. And these forums offer an opportunity to bring our students, our alumni, and our extended network together so they have a chance to meet with industry pros, ask questions, and learn about the things that are really going to make a difference for them as they move on into their career. So we're really happy to have you. And I have to say, I was thinking a lot about this today. We are closing in on year 4 of these forums, bi-monthly forums. We have different guests that join us a couple of times a month, and they're industry pros. Some of them are our alumni who are working in the field, but many of them are our employer partners and community partners that really recognize the importance of bringing students and graduates together to discuss opportunity. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. I really encourage you, if you have a minute, to go to the Be On Air YouTube channel and check out the library. We've had so many wonderful guests, and if you're looking for connections in virtually any part of media, I think you're going to find a wealth of information there, contact information, and every one of our guests always drops some really beautiful golden nuggets that make a big difference on futures of our students and graduates and extended community. So we invite you to join, like, and subscribe and be a part of what we're doing in the Be On Air Forum. Today's focus is back on employment. It is such an important topic, and we find that while many people get trained up for what they're doing and have thoughts about what they'd like to do, it's that bridge. It's bringing that education together with opportunity and being able to pull that string and just fly and take off doing the types of things that you love to do. We welcome back this week Jerry Butler. Jerry is a good friend to our campus and really a good friend to many, many people in the media industry. I'm going to say across the country, but I would venture to say probably across the world. Jerry is the managing partner of Media Jobs Reports, and Jerry leverages over 30 years of experience in the industry. He's worked in every aspect of broadcasting, including hiring and prepping people, prepping incoming candidates and getting them ready for jobs and helping them to soar in the field that they're looking to soar. Jerry has also been an adjunct professor at the University of Florida, and he's just bringing all that expertise back to us, talking about talent management and really how to grow yourself and groom yourself for landing that job. We're going to focus on resume and interview readiness, but mostly we're going to talk about what does it mean to be career ready? What does it mean to be ready to take that interview? We're going to delve a little deeper into that to give you some advice and absolutely make sure that you're ready to land that job. Our moderator tonight is our wonderful Tony Lopez. We are so happy to have you back again, Tony. To have him back is really a funny thing to say because he's been moderating for years and he hasn't said no, but he's absolutely wonderful at what he does. Tony is an alumni of Illinois Media School. He is also very talented on-air guy. He's a member of the national branding team. He is a co-host of his own podcast, The Parlay, and he is also education coordinator at the Illinois Media School Chicago campus. And truly what makes Tony so special, aside from all those talents, is that he understands both sides. He was a student, he's a graduate, he's an instructor, and now he's ed coordinator for the school. So he has seen all the different areas that you find yourself in right now in terms of looking for jobs and securing that opportunity. And I just know that together you're really in store for another great hour, an engaging hour. I invite you to put your comments and questions in the chat so that we're ready to go. And I'll be feeding those forward for the guys as we move through the webinar. And just relax, enjoy yourself, and learn a lot from our industry pros. Tony, it's over to you.
Thank you, Linda. And as always, kudos to your introductions. I cannot go on with the forum without giving you props for the amazing intros you give to guests and me every time. So thank you.
You're very welcome. It's easy to do it. Okay, I'm jumping below. You guys get busy. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And welcome everybody to the forum again. We're happy to have everyone here for this next hour. Again, we are going to remind the audience that at the 45-minute mark of this forum, we are going to open up the chat for questions, a Q&A section where our guest Jerry will be able to answer any questions that you have. You can even type the questions during the conversation. We will get to them. I know Linda will pop them up on screen, and we will read your questions and of course respond with our guests. But we thank everyone that's in the chat now, and enjoy the forum. Again, this is for you guys, and I just can't wait to get dump into this knowledge right now with Jerry Butler. Again, Jerry from MediaJobsReport.com. We meet again. Welcome back to the forum.
Thank you.
Excited to talk to you, man. Let's just dive right into it, man. Let's talk about your career first, right? The media industry is obviously, it can be a very intimidating industry, but a lot of fun, and it can be very rewarding. Talk about your journey and how you got to the point now at Media Jobs Report.
It's a little strange for my start, and this is why I believe in station tours for youth and for schools and so forth. My first chance to go to a radio station was in third grade on a Cub Scout tour. Only one of us got to introduce a song. It was me. It was Sneaky Snake in the Grass by Tom T. Hall. You probably have never heard of that song. But I remembered that. And the same guy on the air that day when I was in third grade was there when I went to work at that same station when I was 16 years old. So I ended up working with that same guy. I worked my way up through programming as a part-timer. I had taken classes in high school for broadcast. Went off to college, worked in Oklahoma City at a big rock station, went back home to my hometown and ran the station as a general manager for 9 years, just almost 10 years. Moved to Northwest Oklahoma, ran a couple of stations up there and worked with an ag and news network. And then I moved to Georgia and ran 8 stations for Cumulus before moving to Montana and running 5 stations for Town Square. At that point in time, I looked at a change in careers to an extent. I still was in radio, but I went to the University of Florida for the opportunity to teach and run their commercial stations. I worked there full-time for 3 years before I went to Music Master, which is a music scheduling program that radio stations and TV stations around the world use to schedule their music and videos. And then about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to run another group of stations here locally. So I did that for a while, and now I'm back at Music Master and running the job site, Media Jobs Report, as well. So that's kind of my tour through the duty and radio. During that time, I also worked with television and expanded out into cable operations at different companies I was with. So it's not just radio, but it was video production, it was sales, all the way from programming through sales and management.
The long journey, right? You've been around, and you've done different tasks, without a doubt, different job positions. The intimidation factor of being in this industry. How did it feel when you first entered it? Did you have that thought process and say to yourself, like, I don't think I can do this after what I've just seen for the first couple of months? How'd you feel?
Absolutely. It's scary. It's scary coming out of school. When I went back home, even though I had multiple years of experience because I'd worked my way through high school and then through college, I was going back home to my hometown to be a general manager of a radio station. And I was 22, 23 years old, and I was going to be managing people that were 2 to 3 times my age in many cases. And one thing I had to understand was I couldn't walk in and, slam your fist on a desk and expect everybody to respect you. You had to earn that respect, even as a general manager. And that's true for any position. If you're coming in as a board up on the weekend, you've got to earn that respect and prove yourself the same way I did as a general manager as well. So it can be very scary. But if you don't go and get out of, your comfort zone, you're never going to grow. And that's part of growing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we definitely preach, on campus when it comes to that side of things, because you are going to face those questions and those concerns and maybe even doubt of yourself in this journey. But most definitely true what you said, Jerry, in regards to that. So, everybody's journey is different, but the thought process can be the same when it comes to it. Jerry, when it comes to your experiences in the industry, what's been the most fulfilling moment for you for the jobs that you've done? You've had many different ones. What's been the most fulfilling moment for you?
And it's funny, Linda and I have talked about that, and success changes as you grow in your career and your life. And so when you're first coming out of school, everything you're concentrating on is about you. It's, I want this job. I want, my first apartment, or I want my house. I want this position. That's okay, because that's the time in your life. Pretty soon you may find somebody, a spouse, somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Now it's about us. And so not every decision is just your decision. You have somebody else you're working with. And then maybe down the road, if you choose to have children, that changes everything, because now the spouse can, depend on you to an extent, but they can do their own thing. That child truly depends on you, and it changes your perspective on everything. And it was that point in my life that I truly learned how to enjoy others' success. It wasn't just about me. And so I started concentrating more on growing my team and their expertise and their skills, and seeing them flourish and grow. Sometimes that means getting awards. Sometimes that means moving off to other companies and getting promotions. And I'm okay with that. I've always been of the opinion that you treat people as well as you can. You pay them whatever you can to take care of them, but you train them so they're good enough to leave you if they wanted to. But when you treat them that well, they want to stay. And so I truly believe that's what builds strong teams, is believing in your team, taking care of your team, and backing up your team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm 100% with you on that. When it comes with the team aspect of it, the journey is there. Our experiences are there. We talk about, but before we got to all that, we were students, right?
Right.
Of the game. We were students of trying to figure out, first learn the craft, right? Get your build your own brand, right? And then go out there and do it. And that part is the beginning and can be the hardest part. So I'll ask you first, what's your common advice to students? Like, what do you tell them when they're trying to get that first entry level job, the dreaded one, right? The one they're like waiting on that email for, that phone call
Right.
for. What do you tell the students?
Get your foot in the door. I know you want to do the morning show, or you want to do the evening show, and you want that big limelight. It's not always that gets you in the door. So if it's a board up on a weekend on a Sunday night shift at 10 o'clock, take it. If that's what gets you in the door, or if it's video and you're learning to run master control overnight, or you're running camera, whatever it is to get your foot in the door, it may not even be full time at first. That's okay, because quite often what happens is you get in, you prove yourself, and sometimes within just a couple of weeks or even months, you may have a full-time offer, because at many companies, people are promoted up, people move out, things happen. And so whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. And the fact is you may come in as a board op, or an evening, camera person, or someone behind the scenes doing production as well. It may not be that anchor position, but as you move up on your resume, what do people look at? It's the last position you had at that organization. So work your way up, prove yourself, learn everything you can. It's going to be scary. It's something brand new, but you can do it. Believe in yourself.
The in tangent with that, what is a phrase that says along is get ready, pack your bags and get ready to go.
Yep.
And a lot of people are always question that, or they're scared of that. But pack your bags, get ready to go means that if you have to make a move and leave the state, and you're able to do so, do it.
Do it. Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Jerry?
And that's the thing, the industry has changed so much over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. There's fewer jobs out there, but that doesn't mean there's no jobs out there. There's a lot of jobs. I've got over 1,500 positions right now posted on our website. And by all means, that's not all the jobs. There's more than that out there. And so there are opportunities, but you have to be able to make those moves, make those decisions. If you don't want to move out of the city that you're in, it's going to restrict you a bit on what you're willing to do and the opportunities that are going to be there. You may have to wait a while before something comes up. But if you're willing to move to get that experience, absolutely, there are opportunities out there.
When you move, because you traveled a little bit yourself, how was that for you? How were you able to hone that and just kind of stay level headed as you went through those experiences?
Sure. And so, especially in media, more probably than any other industry, it's expected that you move to an extent. Now, I will tell you that each one of the students at Beyond Air, you're in a great place because you're already in a major market. Whether it's Colorado, Illinois, Miami, Ohio, those are all major markets that are recognized across the country.
Yeah.
And so when you can get your foot in the door, even if it's part-time, weekends, overnights, whatever it is, those call letters and those stations and those companies will be recognized nationwide. That's a huge plus. So when you talk about being ready to go, it's not always just packing your bags. It's, as a student right now, you're not finished with school. Do you have a resume ready? Do you have a cover letter? And I'm talking just a general resume, general cover letter. Do you have business cards? Little things like that, that if I say, hey, look, I've got an opportunity right now, but I need to get, your resume over to somebody. Can you email it to me right now? That's being packed, being ready to go. It may not be moving across the country, and that may not be your intent right now. But if you're wanting a job, you need to be ready to go with what it takes to get that job.
That's great. No, that's great, Jerry. How can students effectively research like potential employers, and to make their application stand out? That's one thing that's huge, right? You have to do that research. How can they use that energy effectively when they go through that process?
Absolutely. So make sure and study their company website. Find out what all they do. Find out, look at their job sites. Look how often they're rotating. You can go to websites like Glassdoor. Some recruiters like that. Some companies don't like that because you can make comments, good, bad, or otherwise, and take that into consideration. You may have a disgruntled employee that's made some horrible comment, but 100 other people have said wonderful things about the company. So read through those and take that like a grain of salt. But at the same time, those are good opportunities to see what's going on behind the scenes. If you're seeing the same positions rotate over and over and over again, that may be a red flag to a company you may not want to work for. So those are things you can look at. So look at the company sites, look at the job postings, see what's going on there. But more importantly, too, become familiar with their product. If you're going into a TV station and you're going to say, oh, I love this station, and the first thing they ask you is, tell me who's your favorite anchor, and you can't name their anchor, that's a problem. Or if you're going to a radio station and they've got 5 different radio stations in their cluster, and they said, what station do you listen to? Well, I listen to Magic. Really? What's your favorite part about Magic? And you can't name an air personality or a promotion that they've recently done. I've had students literally come into me and go, I was with a country station and they were interviewing to be a board op on our country station. They go, I really don't listen to country. You know what? That's okay to me. You were honest. You don't have to listen to the station and know everything about it, but be honest about it. Now, it's better if you love the station and you know everything about it in many cases, but at the same time, honesty is the best policy across the board.
No, without a doubt. And, you talked a lot about different ways in what to do in research. Are there any key elements of preparation that you feel that's overlooked by job seekers in the media in itself?
So when you research the company, you also want to research the people that will be interviewing you. You want to research your superiors, your bosses, not only who runs the company, who it's going to be easy to find, on a website, but maybe it's the program director or operations manager or a news director or whoever it may be, depending on where you go, and find out information on those people. And it's not a matter of stalking. You want to find out what their background is. You want to find something that can connect you outside of just this position. Well, if you're looking and you find somebody that, maybe they were raised 30 minutes from your hometown and you had no idea, and they're across the country and you're interviewing for this job, that's a topic that can make it very personal. I taught at the University of Florida, and you could go anywhere and run into somebody that was a Gator, it seemed like. And so that is a connection that goes above and beyond just that resume and that cover letter that you've given them. So if you can find something that you can connect personal on, sometimes it's a hobby, sometimes it's a passion, like a school that you've gone to. Maybe it was somebody that was an alumni of Be On Air. That's fantastic. You want to research the people that you're going to interview with and find out more information about them, not just the organization.
No, very true. And we're talking about how to separate yourself from the crowd, right? And one thing, an example I'll use before I give you my next question is, I remember being in an internship at Comcast Sportsnet Chicago back in the heydays, 2010, and did my internship, was there when I didn't need to be there. Working hard, trying to show your worth.
Yes.
One thing I did to try to differentiate myself from the crowd was I said goodbye to everybody, like literally everyone. Even the janitor.
Yes.
The janitor, and the janitor was confused. He was like, "Okay, well, oh yeah, that's fine." We had a great relationship. It was a lot of fun. But that's an example, I think, and I was able to get the gig a month after, right?
Yep.
And I feel like that almost had a small impact on my hiring. But the question I want to ask you is, what strategies can differentiate a candidate from the crowded field, right? There's so many people applying for these gigs. How do you feel like you should differentiate yourself or different tactics?
Sure. Exactly what you said. The way you make people feel, they will remember that. And you would say hi to the janitor or bye to the janitor or anybody else if it's in sales or production or whatever. It's those type of things that make the difference. I'll go to on air or job fairs quite a bit, and I'll have on-air personalities come to me for radio or TV, and they'll bring a resume, they'll bring a cover letter, and they're looking for a job. And I'll ask them, do they have a business card? And 9 times out of 10, the majority do not, but somebody in that group will. And guess what? Everybody turns around and looks at them and they hand me a business card. Guess what? That's going to be right on the top. Everybody that's at Be On Air Network, you're getting a great education. You're getting the skills, you're getting the tools, but now you have to look at how can you be better than the person sitting in the class next to you? And that was always my example to my students at UF. You've heard of the University of Florida. Have you heard of the University of Central Oklahoma? Probably not. Many people out of Oklahoma have not. It's the 3rd largest school behind OU and OSU. But at the same time, it's not as recognizable as maybe some of the larger universities or an organization like Be On Air Network. So you have to look at, how can I stand out? How can I look more professional? How can I look like you need to hire me for this job? And it's those small things like saying hi to everybody, making them feel good, knowing that you're excited about being there. Those things carry across. How can you stand out? You don't see people, almost all of the applications anymore are applying online, and you're submitting your resume and your cover letter. But you know what? Sometimes you still apply online because that's how they've requested it. But when was the last time you sent a FedEx to anybody?
Right.
When you apply online, it goes to the human resources department, and they're going to filter it and do whatever they need to. But if you've done your research and you find out who the hiring manager is that you're going to be answering to, if you send them a FedEx and it's sitting on their desk, do you think an assistant's opening that FedEx? They're opening that FedEx. And you can even put in your cover letter that you include in that FedEx, I've submitted my information online, but I just wanted to make sure that you got a chance to look at it.
That's
and
good. No,
it's those type of things that make the difference. And it's not a letter, because if you're sending it to, especially a president or a VP of a company, they may have an assistant that opens those. But 9 times out of 10, a FedEx, that will be opened by the person it's addressed to.
Take note. I hope everyone's taking note. That was a good dime right there. It was a great dime. And we're talking to Jerry Butler here from Media Jobs Report. Jerry, resume and cover letter, you just mentioned it right now. Those are very essential to the hiring process, right? It gives us the backdrop on what this candidate has done, what are their skill sets and so forth. So we'll ask you just the basic question, what are the common mistakes that you see on cover letters and resumes? It can be an easy process, but it also can be, the word intimidating comes to mind all the time, but it's not that easy. You have to make sure that you use verbiage that's essential to what you're trying to get to. So what are the common mistakes you see?
So consistency. If you're putting dates of your experience on your resume, make sure it's consistent. If you're doing it year to year, do it year to year across the board. If you're doing it month and year, to month and year, do it across the board. I see that switched around a lot. The other thing is make sure you proofread it for just basic grammatical errors and spelling. And there's things like Grammarly, the software that you can put on your web browser that's totally free. You don't even have to pay for the version of it. And it can pick up a lot of the issues that you run into with grammar as well as misspelling. And so little things like that that don't cost you a dime can make a difference. The other thing is make sure and put your contact information on every single page. So if you've got a resume and you've got a cover letter and maybe you have an air check or a reel, depending if you're doing on air or video or whatever it may be, or maybe you're doing digital and you've got a portfolio, make sure your contact information is on each piece that you hand in, that you submit. Because what happens is, especially when you get where somebody's looking at, 20, 30, or 200 different applications and anything gets separated, you want them to make sure that they can get a hold of you. So contact information on every page, make sure and double check your grammar and your spelling. That's a huge issue. And don't go too long on the resume. Most people will say 1 page. As you start to grow in the industry and you get more experience, it may go beyond that, and that's okay. And one of my pet peeves was, do not put references upon request on your resume. If I need to request it, you just made me jump through a hoop to try to hire you. You want to make it as easy as possible for me to hire you. So if you put in 3 references on your resume, that's okay, and it goes over to the second page. I'm great with that because you've provided the references and you didn't tell me that I need to request them from you. And so the other side of it is that's part of getting ready, where you were talking about packing and being ready to move. You've already cleared those references to make sure they're okay, that somebody can call them. Or better yet, include a couple of letters of recommendations. You don't see that near as much anymore.
Yeah, the references upon requesting is a big no-no. And I've seen that before myself, and it's very true. You're making an extra step for the person who's trying to take care of you when the person has a lot of things that they need to do.
Right.
So listen to Jerry on that one. Jerry, it's very, very true. The other side of that, besides the resume and cover letter, is the reel, right? That or the reel or the audio demo,
right?
So there's 2 sides to that, but that part of this in the media industry is so essential because you're now providing the actual physical or proof of what you do. And so talk about the reels, talk about audio demos. How do you see it as a hiring manager when they come in? How important are they?
I think it's essential. Whether you're doing production or you're on the air, either way, it's extremely important because I get to see your work and what you produced. And I also know that work that you're providing to me is probably the best work that you have. So keep that in mind. You want to grab their attention right away. Sadly, 10 seconds is probably all you've got to get somebody's attention. You better have your best material right at the beginning. Doesn't mean they're only going to listen for 10 seconds or watch for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But if they don't like what they hear in the first 10 seconds, they turn you off and they don't hear anything else. And so put your best material first. Make sure and show varied talents. So if you've got a story that's very, hardcore, and maybe it's an accident or something like that, or maybe it has to do something that's very emotional, make sure and show different talents on how you present stories. Here's a hard story. Here's a soft story. So you can show that you've got a diverse background and you can understand and show that type of empathy towards whoever you're interviewing. Maybe it's an interview, maybe it's a hard story, whatever it is, show those different talents in that. And the same is true for an on air for radio. Somebody will provide something funny. Somebody will do something general that I'm just doing an intro over a song and a ramp, or I'm doing a weather forecast or news or whatever it may be. That's okay, but show how you can do that in different flavors.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. One of the key things I think you mentioned is in regards to that demo. The first 30 seconds to minutes got to be a compilation, right?
Yes.
A compilation of things that you've done. Then, if you want to answer a certain, subject matter of the demo reel, whatever it is, then you can go into it. But you got to have it to be very exciting at the very beginning. You got to capture that eye, and that is very key. Have you any examples of something that you saw without mentioning any names of a demo reel or audio reel that really captured your attention you can't forget?
I worked with a guy in Oklahoma City at one time, and he had applied for a huge position for a network. and it was a big rock network. And he paper mache'd an old radio, and it said press here. Now these days it wouldn't work because they'd probably call the police and say, what is this, but at that point in time, his demo was in the radio, and when they pushed the button, it hit play and you couldn't turn it off. And it was a giant rock because it was a rock station, right? That was a great way to get somebody's attention, and guess what? He got the job. I've seen multiple people do things, and not only interviewing, but even trying to get business, where they would include something with it. Here's my demo and a $5 gift card to Starbucks, so you can have coffee while you kick back and enjoy my demo, or you listen to my demo, or something like that. I've seen people include candy. Do I recommend that? It really, really depends on the position. If it's going to an HR department, I would probably never say that. If you have a direct line to the hiring manager, that may be a possibility. If you know something that they enjoy, if that you look on their social media and they love coffee and they love Starbucks, that may not be a bad idea at all. So you have to judge that and be very careful with it. You don't want to come across as corny or unprofessional, but at the same time, we're in communication, and sometimes the best way to get attention is to get their attention. And so you want to stand out in the pack, and sometimes you have to get a little outside the box to do that. And so be careful what you do, but don't be afraid to do it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking to Jerry Butler again for Media Jobs Report. Just a reminder to our audience that we're going to be opening up the floor for a Q&A session, to where you're able to ask Jerry any questions that you have in regards to the topic that we're speaking about, at the moment. And, we'll be doing that in about 14 minutes, as I look at my clock here, 14 minutes. So stay tuned for that, guys. I see some questions already populating in the chat, so we are going to get to them very, very soon. So hang in there, guys, as we continue to talk right now. Jerry, rejection is there. Rejection in life is never pretty. You learn from it, but it can happen in this field. So my question to you is, how can candidates maintain being motivated and positive in the face of rejection, or in the face of repeated rejection? Because they can send out resumes, cover letters, demos, 50 of them, and they can all get rejected, and you have to maintain that mindset to not give up. How do you handle it?
And it's not something unique to you in school. I've done this for 35 years, and I can send out a resume right now and not hear anything back, and it eats me up. I think it's innate. I think it's part of our personalities of being in media, that we want to be liked, and we want to understand why somebody didn't answer us back. You're not alone. So how do you get over that? I think it's the same way that I would deal with my sales teams. I've gone out on multiple calls where I had a salesperson that was very, very nervous. And I said, why are you nervous? And first of all, the GM's going with them. I understand that can make them nervous, but they've asked me to be there in many cases to help them with this sale. And I said, look, let's go have some fun. Do you have any advertising from these people right now? No. Are you losing any money if we don't get this by today? No. So let's go have fun and see what we can do. The same is true with interviewing for that job. Yes, you want it, but you're not losing your job. Let's go out and relax, and let's show them what you really can do. And I think that's the key. Now, how do you bounce back, though, after you've had rejection after rejection? Continue to network. Continue to believe in yourself, because you know what? If you want it, it'll eventually happen, and it just will. You have to keep looking. And I've always heard the estimate, for every $10,000 you want to make a year, it's a month of job search. And I think there's some truth to that. So if you wanted to make $100,000 a year, and you've got the experience to back that up, not to say you're going to spend 10 months and get $100,000, but if you've got the experience to back that up, you know what? I think you have to understand it's going to take a little while to find those positions. And that's why I say, if you can get your foot in the door while you're in school, even if it's overnights, weekends, doing a board shift, do that. And because that's your foot in the door, and now you're building that relationship with that employer, that by the time you're out of school, you may have that full-time position. You may have it before you get out of school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can you give us an example of maybe of somebody who turned rejection into a success story?
I had, and I've always recommended it to students, and you have to be careful with the way you handle it. But sometimes, especially as a student, you can get away with it a lot more than I could after 35 years in the business. But as a student, you got to be willing to learn, and you can use that to your advantage. And what I mean by that is, when you apply, you might get a call for an interview. And that's wonderful. Go through the interview. if you get rejected, sometimes at that point, depending on how the interview went and you thought it went well, sometimes it's okay to reach back out to that employer and ask them, could I just pick your brain for 5 minutes? I understand you've moved on with another candidate. I'm okay with that, but I just want to pick your brain for 5 minutes so I can do better on my next interview. And you know what? As a student, you can get away with that. Don't be afraid to ask that, because you know what? That follow-up right there may make the difference, because sometimes the first person they offered the job to, they don't take it. But guess who's going to stick out in their minds? Because not only did you reach out, not begging them for the job and defending yourself and say how wonderful you are, you're being sympathetic, going, I understand you've moved on, but I want to be better. Would you mind helping me? And you can just ask some questions. Is there anything in the interview that maybe I could have done better? Is there anything on my reel or my demo or my air check that I could have done better? Because I want to make sure that I'm better for the next round. And if you look at it that way, that you get better every step you take, it's all about experience. And those interviews are experience too.
Yeah, it's 2024 right now, and a lot of things have changed, from even hiring processes to just the things that are done to get a job, right? And so my question to you is, have you noticed any new trends or skills in the media industry that job seekers are aware of or are looking at? Even if it's in radio or stations or production
Sure.
companies, have you noticed anything different, or something that wasn't the same as back in the day?
Years ago in small market radio and TV, you learned everything. I'm going to be an anchor. I'm going to be a reporter. I'm going to write. I'm going to produce. I could do it all. That's just what you did in TV, and you did the same thing for radio. I'm going to go out and set up a remote. I'm going to do a remote. I'm going to do my morning show. I'm going to do production. When you get into the major markets like the Chicagos, the Miamis, all of those for years were very, very different. Even when I worked in Oklahoma City, there was a team that set up the remote. I literally showed up as the air personality, picked up the mic and talked for 2 hours, and I could leave. It's a little different now, even in the major markets, that you're learning more outside of your specific skill set. And so you may be on the air and you may do remotes, and that's your core focus, but you may do some production. You may go out and set up a remote. Nowadays, you're probably doing some kind of a blog on digital online. And so you need to learn how to write, and you
Yeah.
need to learn how to do different skills like that. Maybe it's a website. If you're a program director or you're a digital manager, you may be having to take care of websites as well. And multiple companies right now will post a position, on-air personality with digital experience. And so learn all you can in the different areas that are under that roof. You may not go out and pick up sales, but absolutely, if you can write and you understand websites and you understand social media and you want to be on the air, whether it's TV or radio, learn those different skills in the different areas of the stations, and that's going to make you more valuable to the person that you want a job from.
You know, having effective, resumes and cover letters and demo reels are so important. And so that sometimes comes with a little bit of maybe cost, or maybe different things that you have to invest in. My question to you is, like, what do you see, or what do you recommend for students that besides the school being a resource outside of school, that they can use to help them through the process of creating a resume, demo reel,
Sure.
cover letter? What do you think is helpful, or what's helped you, or what you've seen?
Absolutely. And even on our website, mediajobsreport.com, we've got the opportunity for you to log in there. If you click on jobs, you can see tons of opportunities: internships, full-time, part-time positions, radio, TV, journalism, print. We've got all of those on there. But we also have some features where you can click, and you may or may not have ever heard of it. Google has an interview warm-up. And we've got a link to it under jobs on our website. You click on that and it will ask you questions. Now, it's not going to be specific necessarily to media in our case, but at the same time, it allows you to practice that interview and see how you do. There's also another one on there that we've got a link for that you can actually make a video. Those are tougher for me than an interview in a person where you're face to face. And sometimes you'll get an interview that'll be by video and nobody's on the other side of it. It's literally a prompt that says, now our question is, and your camera turns back on and starts recording you. So have that practice beforehand. And you can do those absolutely free. It doesn't cost you a dime. We've got a couple links on our site under jobs that you can practice those interviews. There's also sites where you can look at different templates for resumes and cover letters. Don't be afraid to look at them. there's different types of resumes for the career that you're going into. A resume that's right for media could be very different than the one that's for a business department. And I saw that in many cases where I would go to a job fair or take students to a job fair, and their resumes sometimes were critiqued by a business college. And that sounds great, but a media resume quite often is different than a business resume in many aspects, because you're trying to prove how you can be creative and different things. You still want it to be very professional, and you want it formatted, and you want it consistent, but look at those different templates. The other side, we've got some links where you can go in and do those kind of things. For TV, particularly, a headshot quite often is requested when you're applying for jobs. And so make sure that you can get a headshot. I know we talked during the last meeting that you could, get a friend just to take a nice photo of you. You can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Make sure you're dressed professionally, and you're ready to go. It doesn't have to be a $300 headshot. Scary enough, there's AI headshots available, and you can get those for $19 to $30 or $49 if you wanted to do that. You send off 10 to 20 generally pictures of yourself, and it takes those, compiles it, and it makes a professional photo of you. Now, you may get 20 or 30 of those back, and you only like 2 or 3, and that's generally what will happen, but you'll probably have a pretty good picture in there. So all of those things make your application package, your resume package, look more and more professional. It's the headshots, it's the template for your resume, it's the cover letter that's professional, and including everything that you need in there. And then the follow-up, that's the next part.
That's awesome. Hey, it's good stuff. It's good. I'm actually, as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I think I just want to create a resume and cover letter for no reason here. Let me just get back and creating things. It's so great. One thing that gets lost, and Jerry, I feel is some of the job opportunities, but one that I've seen particularly that comes up a lot on listings is voiceover work.
Yeah.
And voiceover work is, it's been very, growing up in the 90s, voiceovers were a hot thing when it came to animations, when it came to just narrations and documentaries and so forth. And that still is valid today. I see a lot of listings on there. And so, how do you land voiceover work for those that are curious about that? Because it is a niche, it's a niche job.
Absolutely. So we've got some positions in voiceover work posted daily, updated daily. You can look at other websites like Backstage. They have voiceover work that are constantly updated and posted. Voices is another site that you can register with. Some are free, some have a cost. It just depends on what you're looking for. Upwork, Fiverr, those all have voiceover work posted. Sometimes it's voiceover professionals posting that they're available. Sometimes it's a company that's looking for voiceover work. The other side of it there are a ton of agencies that hire for voiceover. And so don't be afraid to look into those and find out more information. That's what they're there for. And so reach out to them, just Google it, and voiceover agencies, and they do placement for voiceovers. So a lot of voiceovers that will happen won't ever hit trade publications or a job site necessarily. They're going to somebody specific that they work with to hire for that. And they're expected as an agency to find somebody professional. So it's always great to reach out and find out more information. Be careful when you sign a contract. Make sure that it works out for you. If you need to have an attorney look at it, you can do that. But sometimes it makes it where you can only work for that agency. And so you want to weigh those. Are they going to truly help you find those jobs and that revenue? Because the fact is if they lock you in and then you can't go get another, voiceover job, that's a problem. So be real careful on those and find out what are required, what you need to do, but reach out to the different voiceover agencies and ask about how, what it takes to become one of their talent pool. There's also big companies like the Mix Group. Also, Benstown, you may have heard of. They do voiceovers. Now, most of those voiceover artists have been doing it for quite some time. They're very, very talented. But if you talk to them and you ask them about, what it takes, they'll talk to you. And if you can get in contact with somebody that is a voiceover personality and just look them up on one of the sites like the Mix Group or Benstown, and then look them up on LinkedIn and reach out and say, hey, could I, I'm a student at Be On Air Network, and I would love to find out more information on how you broke into the industry, because that's where you're going to find the insights. And those are the folks that can open the doors for you as well.
That's great, man. If anybody is interested in voiceover work, definitely don't pursue it, look for it, find the resources, and be encouraged, because there is work out there when it comes to that specific a job. One last question for you, Jerry, before we go to our Q&A session here. One thing that it's overlooked a lot, I've seen in my career and just in general, is body language.
Yeah.
And body language is so important. It really is. It really is. It just shows who you are, almost, to an extent. And so, how important is body language from the interview to even just in the work field, when you're out there?
It's extremely important. When you go in for the interview, make sure eye contact. Extremely important. When you're answering questions, eye contact. Make sure you have a good handshake. It's funny, and I've never seen it anywhere else, but I used to have a class on handshaking and body language at the university. When we would go in one night, we would practice handshaking and tell me what you noticed, and tell me about, we would critique each other. And it's that thing. And I saw somebody post in the comments, practice, practice, practice. And that is so true. I was in martial arts for a while, and the key is so many things you do in martial arts aren't natural. They're just not. If somebody's throwing, a kick at you or a punch, and you're supposed to step into it, there's nothing natural about that.
Yeah.
But it's practice, practice, practice that makes it natural. And the same is true with answering tough questions in an interview. Practice. And so the more you practice, whether it's on air, whether it's production, whether it's with your resume or your interviews, the better you're going to get. It's all experience. And going back real quick to the voiceover stuff, it's very important, if you're going to do voiceover from your home, to have good equipment. And so make sure you have everything that you need. And it may take a while to get it. Because it's not necessarily cheap, but get good equipment, or at least have a place where you can go in and do production. So when you send off those voiceover demos, they're professional and they sound really, really good.
Wait, I have to ask you before we get to our next section here. Give us a tip on handshaking. What does that look like? Is it form, or is it?
You don't want the dead fish thing. That's floppy hand. You don't want that. But at the same time, it's equally offensive if somebody squeezes your hand till it hurts. And it's very true. You want a firm handshake and great eye contact, but you don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable in the process. The toughest part is not having a sweaty palm, because you're nervous. You're in an interview. You're going to be sweating. So be careful on how you hold your hands during the interview, because if your hand is against skin, you're likely going to be sweating. But if it's against your pant leg or your skirt leg or whatever it is, you're probably not going to have a sweaty palm. So keep that in mind. And I know that sounds really strange, but it's true. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with the handshakes. The other thing is, if you go in for the interview, you do have the handshakes, don't forget to follow up after the interviews. That is key, because sometimes they haven't quite made their decision yet, and that could push them over the top.
Writing notes right now about keeping my hands away from skin. Okay, I'm good. All right, I'm just making sure I got the right information here. No, that's awesome, Jerry. That's good. It's great information. I definitely appreciate all that. And now, I want to get to our Q&A session now, to some of the questions that are on the chat. I know we had like about 2 or 3 questions that popped up, so I'm gonna have Linda go ahead and pop those questions on the screen. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and ask these questions and see what we got. All right. First question here is from Brandon Dorizio. He says, how do you stop being discouraged when you either are rejected for a position or never hear anything back after applying?
And that goes back to what I mentioned before. It's disappointing for everybody, not just when you're in school, but even after you've had years of experience and you're wondering why they didn't get back to you. I think it's natural that we all in media want people to like us, and we expect at least some kind of a response, and it just doesn't happen most of the time, unfortunately. And especially now that everything is uploaded online, there's less personal contact than there was before, because before you could drop off your resume or your cover letter at the front desk, and now so many times you go in and go, oh, we don't take those anymore. So you just have to, it doesn't mean you don't get upset. You will get upset. It's going to bother you, but you have to kind of buckle down and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it again, and continue to network, continue to grow, continue to hone your skills, because as you're going through this practice of applying for jobs and interviews, eventually something will happen. But as you go through those steps, once again, it's practice, 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 and you're getting better as you go.
There you go, Brandon. I hope that helped out. with your question. Next question here from the Sharing with Sherry show. She writes, "What are your thoughts on using AI to help with resume writing? Sometimes using AI can be great, but other times it feels generic. Your thoughts?"
Absolutely. So I like AI in many cases because quite often it can format very well. But you're right. You have to go through and proofread it because AI will make it's they're going to have problems with it. I mean, it's not perfect. And so generally speaking, you're not going to necessarily have spelling errors and so forth with AI. Generally, it's pretty good to pick up on that, but it doesn't want to stretch your experience where you've said, I've got 3 years, now it says 30 years or something like that, because it can make those kind of inconsistencies in your resume. So I don't have a problem with using AI to format. It's not the final answer. You still need to proofread. You still need to make sure everything is correct. But if it helps you have a better resume or a better cover letter, absolutely.
And I guess a follow up to that question is, what about Chat GPT? That's something that's used heavily right now. People pay for it. Some people use the free versions. Do you encourage that for when it comes down to the cover letter and resume as well?
I don't have a problem with it. If it produces something that's professional looking that will get somebody's attention and the information is correct and truly reflects you, your personality, and your skills, absolutely. I don't have a problem with it. We hear about AI as a negative so often in media right now because we're all worried it's going to take our job. I mean,
Yes, yes,
that's what it really comes down to. But the fact is it's here.
yeah,
So once again, what can you learn? There's a lot of things you can learn about AI more than just Chat GTP, because you can learn how to interface with it. And if you learn that programming side of it, now that's a huge skill set you can bring to an employer. And you can do that right there, even on the free versions. And so
yeah.
don't be afraid of it. It doesn't mean it's everything's perfect with it, but at the same time, you have to embrace it. It's here. And so start to learn more about it so you're not afraid of it and you know more about the people, you know more about AI than the people that you're interviewing with in many cases.
Yeah. The Sharing with Sherry show did also write. She has a student whom she was able to get hired with a local talent agency called Heyman Talent. The student is very talented and is bilingual in Japanese, Russian, and English. So I'm sure that's a success story to the max. But
Huge.
but she just say, oh, I'm sorry, there's more to the message here. It says, however, she is becoming frustrated by sending voiceover auditions and not getting any callbacks. I try to encourage her that this would happen and the real job is not getting accepted, but landing, and I think there's more to it. Thank you, Linda. I know she's working hard back there. And on an audition, what advice would you give me to advise her to keep going?
It does get tough, especially after you're producing specifically if they're asking for a script that is cut for this. That does get frustrating because that's new work. It's not just putting a demo together and you can send it to the next 30 people. That's something specific for that individual application. And so that can get very frustrating. Unfortunately, that's part of the business. It's just like writing spec spots if you're in sales. You'll write a ton of them and you may or may not get the sale.
Right.
So try to keep your chin up. You know, team up with people that are in the industry with you. Find a networking group because we're all dealing with the same thing. And sometimes when you deal with that frustration together, it makes it a lot easier. And they're going to be able to give you tips that they've used as well to try to break through that barrier. And so don't get discouraged. I'm not saying you're not going to be discouraged when you hear a no. Everybody is, but then snap back and keep going. You have to. But if you can find a support system, whether it's your family, your friends, your coworkers, somebody at school that you can bounce things off of, it makes all the difference in the world.
That's great. That's great. Stay encouraged. Stay encouraged indeed. Brandon here, he just say Derizio. Sorry, I hope I'm saying that right. He states, I heard you mention about demo reels. Should you continuously update your reel with new stuff or make a whole new reel?
It could be either. You don't want to have a reel that's been, really, really old from 3 stations back or whatever it may, or even topics that are very old. Then it comes across as very old. But you'll want to save that. Don't just throw it away. Save it because down the
Yes.
road you may need to use it if you don't have a position that you can go
Yeah.
into a studio and make a new reel. So it's good to have updated material on it, topical. The more topical, more recent topical information is generally better because it's going to trigger memories with the programmers that you're dealing with. If you've got something that was definitely a hit on the air if it's a news story that was impacting not only for your station or yourself, but regionally or nationally. That's huge. And so sometimes those big items don't fall off of your reel because they're just so big. You need to have them on there. And so it really depends on the situation, but take your best, whether it's brand new or not. Try to make your reels as updated as you can, but don't lose your best material either. You really just have to judge that on a one-by-one basis. And I know that's not a perfect answer for you, but if you look at having the best material that they're listening to, just concentrate on that.
Absolutely. Vanishing Shadows, she does right. What kind of questions do they ask you during interviews, and what kind of answers do they look for? What are they looking for in you as a candidate? Sense of character, style, personality. A couple questions in that chat there, but I guess you can start with what kind of questions do they ask in interviews, and what kind of answers do they look for?
Sure. So you're gonna have the typical questions like, tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your hobbies? Maybe they'll get into that. Tell me. They can see your experience generally on the resume, but they're going to ask you scenarios. Tell me about a time that you dealt with a difficult person. How did you handle that? And you're going to have to explain that. Tell me how you dealt with rejection.
That's the famous one.
Yes, yes. Tell me how you dealt with rejection. You've been looking for a job for a while. How have you dealt with rejection? Tell me something about yourself that is not perfect. You're on your resume, you're telling me all this is good, but everybody has a flaw. What's your flaw?
Mhm.
How do you answer that? And what I will warn you against saying is don't say you're a perfectionist, because perfectionist could be a lot of different things. And the problem is quite often, especially in the media industry, we run on deadlines, and a perfectionist wants to be perfect. And so sometimes those deadlines come secondary to be perfectionists.
Yeah.
And so don't use I'm a perfectionist, even though you can say I want high quality, product, and whatever I'm producing needs to be the best quality. That's okay. Just don't call yourself a perfectionist. What you could say is, sometimes I'm harder on myself than I probably should be.
Yeah.
And they'll ask you to explain that. And if you're a reporter and you're doing video, or you're an on air and you're doing, air checks, listen to yourself and critique yourself. We talk about program directors doing air checks all the times, but the fact is you should air check yourself every day.
Right.
Listen
Right.
for those crutches and figure out a way that you can get better. So those are the kinds of questions they're going to ask you, and be ready to answer those. And that's why I say practice, get a friend, use one of the free services out there that you can practice video or online, but practice and let your friends ask you, or the folks that you're going to school with ask you these questions that are tough. Because after you do it for a little while, you're going to be able to come back with an answer. It's just like a salesperson. When somebody says, I don't have the budget for that, do you walk out the door, or do you try to figure out how you can adjust your sales pitch to work with their budget? And the same is true with that interview.
It's good stuff there. Then we have one more question here from Brandon Harris. He does ask, should you keep yourself open to multiple positions / jobs, or stay focused on one?
You know what? I would say have the one that you want. I mean, there's no question about it. You want that job, go for it. But absolutely have multiple positions in mind and skills. And that's why I say learn what you can outside of that pure focus. And that's going to get you in the door. It's easier to find a job when you have a job than when you don't have a job. And that's true because you're already getting experience, and somebody knows that they've hired you and you're dependable. So I would say concentrate on multiple positions. Even when I was teaching at UF and students were looking for internships, I said, there's two types of internships. The internship that you think you can get, and the internships that you think you can't. And the same is true with the job. And I don't mean by skill can't get it, that you're not qualified. It's just a huge station. It's a huge opportunity. They're a nationally syndicated show. There's no way they'd ever pick me to be their producer, as an intern. It happens. So don't be afraid to apply for those jobs. Don't be afraid to apply for multiple jobs at the same time, because if you're always concentrating on that single job, it's going to take a very long time in most cases to get that job. One thing I do want to mention, when you do that interview, and we haven't talked really about interviews on this, make sure and follow up. It's extremely important when it comes to sales. I don't know if anybody wants to go into sales, but the whole idea of sales is you've got to close. You've got to close the deal. So you had the interview. Ask when you can contact them again to follow up. They'll generally tell you because you've asked, give me 3 days, give me a week, talk to me next week. Whatever it is, ask that question and follow up. The other thing is it with salespeople, if they didn't follow up with me, they didn't close the deal. I mean, that was a huge part of the interview. And you don't have to be in sales, because what are we all doing? We're selling ourselves in this interview. Follow up afterwards with a thank you note or card. Nowadays, it's so often it's an email if you have the email, but if you can do a handwritten thank you, that's great. And I do want to say one thing before we wrap up. I was interviewing with Cumulus and working with the senior VP, which I have the utmost respect for. Great guy. And he interviewed me in Atlanta during National Association of Broadcasters conference. And I had gone upstairs, interviewed with him. One of the things we talked about in the interview was, he says, are you reading any books? Be ready to answer that question. Any trade magazines, trade websites now, not so many magazines, or books, because they will ask you those questions. And I had mentioned a book he wasn't reading. He had mentioned a book that I had read, and we talked about that. And so afterwards, I literally went down two flights of stairs, went to the bookstore in Atlanta, bought the book I was reading, signed the inside, thank you for your time and your interview, I look forward to hearing you. And I FedExed it to him, so he had it on his desk the next morning. It wasn't a week later, I got a call for the job interview. I can't say that's what sealed the deal, but it's those little things that make you stand out.
Yes, absolutely. You got to do it. I attest to that 100% through my personal story that I told you earlier. So yes, I hope you all were encouraged by that and took those notes. You definitely want to stand out in many different ways, and make sure that you're out there. You're out there, and you're not giving up either. Make sure that when you do receive rejection, when you are not successful the first couple of times, you have to keep pushing. You have to keep putting it out there. Like Jerry said, it's gonna happen. Something's gonna bite soon. It's gonna happen. And so, Jerry, man, we appreciate you so much. You were definitely a book of knowledge, man, and you're so tenured in the industry of media. Your experience is so valuable, and our students, I know, appreciate it as well. I personally, as always, appreciate all guests that come on here with their experiences, and we really appreciate that. So, Linda, I know you just popped on. Thank you so much for everyone who joined the forum. I hope you guys were involved, and if you are a student and you were in the forum, please don't forget your mark, your 2 hours. Linda.
Oh, you're so awesome. Thank you so much. It was a fast-paced hour and filled with so much information, Jerry. Thank you. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I feel like there was such practical help, and Tony did a great job moderating. I would say
I felt off today. I felt a little off today. I'm sorry.
No, I think you were fabulous. So if you want to know how good you did, always ask the people that are watching. So it was, I think, it's so easy in an easygoing conversation like this on a subject that's so important to sometimes lose yourself in the conversation because, you almost forgot. You just you're in this great conversation, but you were fabulous. And, to drive it home again, I just think over and over, it's so important to recognize that practice equals success in everything that we do in life. The first time you do something, each time you repeat doing that thing, you get better at it. You feel more confident. You throw your shoulders back. You actually look forward right to that next interview after you make it through that first interview. Now you know what to do with your palms if you're feeling like a little bit nervous, right? We know just here to wipe those off on our pants before, right? Like that was so great. But, it's those practical little tips, I believe, that make the whole process so much more fun. And, the results that you receive feel even more exciting. And again, that input about not being discouraged because, occasionally through career services, somebody will say, oh my gosh, well, I applied to 2 jobs and I cannot believe I haven't heard back. Right. Well, in this day and age, 2 jobs is nothing. Like Jerry said, you have to put in the time based on what it is you want to achieve. And eventually you're going to find that secret sauce that gets you to the next interview and the next one. And you'll have career service support, of course, along the way, and mentors. Jerry has this great job site reach out to him. He's an open book. He wants to help you. He wants you to grow. We want to help you and see you grow as well. And so collectively, you've got a lot of support, and we appreciate it. Jerry, fabulous hour. And for everybody, you're welcome. Everybody on board, you can go to the YouTube channel, be on your YouTube. You can view this, because I think, I've seen in the comments, right, there was so much information, whether it's voiceover or just some tips you might want to listen to again, and then really put those into practical motion. So thank you for your time, for joining us tonight. I'm sure we'll have you back as we move along. You're just great at what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. And to all of you out there, thanks for joining. And Tony, what do you want to tell them about school?
In regards to school, just don't forget to mark your hours. Fill out that sheet. I don't got one with me right now, but fill an hour sheet out. Make sure a staff member signs it and get those 2 hours.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you for joining the Be On Air. Be safe and good luck through Election Day. And we'll see you on the other side with our next episode of the Be On Air Forum. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Do we do it?